Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. If you have a mom, you'll love our podcasts. Here are your hosts, former Fox News political correspondent Joel Waldman and his mom, Carmela, a licensed marriage therapist and Holocaust survivor.
I'll tell you what, Carm, I was going to really kind of throw a curveball into the opening of this show today and tell you that I was feeling fantastic. It's a beautiful day. I love my children. I love my new puppy, Ethelbug Johnson. It's been, one dog has got diarrhea, and then while
I would be lightheaded. I become lightheaded when you talk like this.
I was going to go through all that. But then you and I had a meeting today because we are actually taking this podcast extremely seriously.
No, it's not an interesting topic for the public.
No, it is an interesting topic.
There is one point I want to bring up. I must right now before I forget.
Bring it up.
If you put on one more episode with that same miserable living room with the rocking chair and the embroidered pillow and the wallpaper that's full of flowers, I am not going to
to give away the secret sauce, but we do this podcast in front of a green screen, and then we superimpose a living room that looks like it's from the heart of Subotica, Yugoslavia.
Where I was born, and it did not look like that.
Carmela is
that's
offended.
His fantasy.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a poll to see what people think of it and if we should switch it. What do you want? Some super slick looking studio?
No, I want a green background.
No, green. You can't. A green background is a green screen that's intention. You don't see them doing the weather with a green background.
Well, I want it. We will be original and have it with the.
No, but the reason I did not go down the optimistic route today, because something just once again took my breath away. We had a meeting with a social media company.
Joel, they're
and
not
you called
interested.
me. No, they are interested. And you called me because it was a Zoom meeting, and you said at 10 minutes before the meeting, you say to me, Joel, I did not get the Zoom meeting. Are you going to send it to me? And I said, Carmela, I have 3 kids and 2 dogs. Both dogs have diarrhea. I'm dealing with a lot. And I will get it to you when I have time. And what was your response to that, Carm?
I don't want to talk to you anymore, because if you say that, I don't want it related with, when this is an important meeting to me and you talk about trash. Do me a favor. Let's wind up.
An 82-year-old mother said,
Joel, I'll kill you. You say that, I'll attack you.
I'll save it for the next podcast. But it was 3 words.
He's very immature.
It was 3 words, and the first word was and the middle word is and that's what my 82-year-old mother said to me. Just absolutely astonishing.
I did not. I can swear on he lies now. He makes.
You're swearing.
You are very immature, Joel. I am going to walk out. Joel.
How do you lie with such a straight face when you know you said it?
Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
You're saying you didn't say it.
I don't know why are you laughing.
You said it.
I did not.
We'll be right back.
I did not. He's very, very annoying to me, because this meeting, this was perfect with that.
We'll be right back with super famous author, Dara Horn.
I know what you are doing. You are trying to do something really shocking and something really embarrassing so that it would become viral.
Her book is called "People Love Dead Jews: Reports from a Haunted Present."
Very
and
mature.
I'll give you a hint.
I wasn't disappointed with you till now. Now I am disappointed.
Nothing worse than a Jewish mother being disappointed.
Well, I am disappointed, I swear. Because you are just creating. They advised you this morning to make it real sensationalistic, and you're using me.
They did not advise that.
Yes, they advised. I see what they put
Carmela,
on.
Carmela, I am just keeping a running log in my head of things that you say to me that I've never recognized or even...
Joel, but I did not say this to you. You fantasize.
Carmela, I have it
You
on
want me
tape.
to take an oath?
Yeah, I have the audio tape. I'd be careful before you take an oath.
No, I never said it on the audio tape.
Carmela, I had it.
I didn't.
I've never seen someone lie the way you do.
Well, don't you know my story?
Through your teeth, you lie.
You don't know my story?
What? You had to lie about being Catholic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why you can
But
lie
how
about
old
it.
was I?
4.5.
Almost, no, after 5 already.
We'll be right back.
After 5. I was after 5.
After 5. We'll be back with Dara Horn's People Love Dead Jews.
Do you want to help my son? His company, Content Partners Media, specializes in brand video and content creation for innovative companies and others. Please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com and hire him. I repeat, please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com.
Welcome back to Surviving the Survivor. It's time now for the main schmooze.
So, Carm, I've been pressuring you for weeks now. Our content, I think, is on point, especially with great guests, one of whom we're about to speak to. But our social media savvy needs some work. So we were talking to a company just before the podcast, and something kind of interesting came up. Our logo is a little extreme. It was your idea. It's based off the Madonna and her baby. We
ran with it.
We tweaked it a little bit. So I'm wearing a Knicks jersey, and we're on Miami Beach with I have a diaper on,
and my aura is gone.
But the person at the social media company, who, for full disclosure, is not of Jewish heritage, told you what? He said it's a little too...
he said to me, this happened at 11, and he said to me, I said, how do you feel about the logo if we are going to look at everything, if we are going to do a dissection? He said, oh, the logo, it's a Christian thing. And what was your you bit your tongue, which is hard for you to do.
Very hard. But what was your immediate thought?
I said, no, sir, that's where all our troubles happened. Those two sitting there, the Madonna and child, are Jewish.
Mary and Jesus, really
so
Jews.
That was the morning.
I don't know why I bring that up, but our next guest can help us continue to
pursue this topic.
Try to figure this out. And she is a very, very accomplished author. We'd like to say hello to the great Dara Horn. Hello, Dara.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You are quite welcome. I am going to read a short bio so people know who we are talking to. Dara Horn is the award-winning author of not one, not two, not three, but of 6 books, including most recently People Love Dead Jews, Reports from a Haunted Present, which if you haven't heard about, you will, because in the world of literature, it has gone viral. Dara is the recipient of 2 National Book Awards, the Edward Lewis Wallant Award, if I'm saying that correctly, the Harold U. Ribalow Award, and the Reformed Judaism Fiction Prize. Her books have been selected as New York Times Notable Books, Booklist 25 Best Books of the Decade, and San Francisco Chronicle's Best Books of the Year, and they've been translated into 11 languages. She went to a mediocre university, Dara receiving her doctorate in comparative literature from Harvard University, studying Yiddish and Hebrew, but perhaps her biggest and best accomplishment on top of her 4 children, I believe.
I bet you will say New Jersey.
Is the fact that she hails from the great state of New Jersey. Dara, welcome.
We don't compare notes, but I knew you would say Jersey.
Jersey, baby. Got to represent Jersey. So, Dara, let's start here. How did you come up with the title of the book?
Sure. Well, so this was a topic I had been thinking about for a long time. And the title of the book comes from the way the first chapter begins, which is, it starts in 2018 when Smithsonian Magazine asked me to write a piece for them about Anne Frank. And I got that request and I just felt this overwhelming sense of dread because I realized I was like, wow, I really don't want to write about Anne Frank. And then, so the logical thing to do would have been to turn this assignment down. But I'm a writer, so I'm not a very logical person. And I just sort of thought like, well, this is interesting. Why don't I want to do this? And then I remembered a news story I had read about earlier that year, and this is again in 2018, of something that had happened at the Anne Frank Museum in Amsterdam. This is for any listeners. I cannot imagine you have listeners who aren't aware of this, but this is where Anne Frank and her family and several other people were hiding from the Nazis during World War II in this office building in Amsterdam. And this place where these hiding, these rooms where she and these people were hidden is now this like blockbuster museum. Before COVID, they had maybe 2 million visitors a year. The news item I had seen was about a young Jewish employee at this museum, and his employers would not allow him to wear his yarmulke to work. They made him hide it under a baseball hat. And he appealed this decision to the board of the museum, and they then deliberated for 4 months and then relented and allowed this man to wear his yarmulke to work. And I had read that news story, and I just thought, 4 months seems like a really long time for the Anne Frank Museum to ponder whether or not it was a good idea to force a Jew into hiding. And I thought, there's something going on here. And I wrote this piece basically about how there's this problem, which is that, people like telling stories about dead Jews that make them feel better about themselves. And that often involves erasing the identity of living Jews. So I wrote this piece for Smithsonian, and the title of the book is from the very first line in that piece, which is in the book. And the first line of the piece is, "People love dead Jews, living Jews, not so much." And what then happened was that piece came out in Smithsonian Magazine in the fall of 2018. Just a few days after that piece came out, there was the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And like within hours of that attack, the New York Times called me and asked me to write about dead Jews. As I put it in the book, I sort of became the New York Times' go-to person for the emerging literary genre of synagogue shooting op-eds. Like, this was not a job I applied for. And I just started thinking, why do people keep wanting me to write about dead Jews? I'm a person who published 5 novels, as you mentioned. I have a PhD in Yiddish and Hebrew literature. All my novels deal with Jewish life and culture. But there's something going on here, which is that it's the way that dead Jews are used and the role they play in this wider world's imagination. And so, yes, the title is very uncomfortable. And if you think the title is disturbing, wait till you see what is in the rest of the book, because it is only getting more disturbing from there.
Well, let me tell you. So what's interesting, Carmela, my lovely co-host, who also brought me into this earth, I heard about the book, I'm not sure how, and she started to read it. And I immediately get phone calls about her telling me, "You are illiterate. You don't read. You're a hollowhead. Buy this book. People love dead Jews." Her favorite word is a hollowhead. So I don't know what she's talking about. And to be quite honest, I don't really relate. But I bought it because we have a friend, and he's been on the podcast, who had a off-Broadway show called Old Jews Telling Jokes. And that was my first association. And I thought this was a book about comedy, and I'm into comedy. Little did I know it was not about comedy. But I bring this up because this one over here doesn't get nervous and doesn't get anxious. For the last 4 weeks since I took the initiative to book you, Carmela is telling me, "This is very personal to me. This is very difficult for me. You don't understand. I am very nervous. We need to be prepared. You need to read the book." And I see her reading her notes very carefully right now. So, Carmela, why is this so close to your heart?
First of all, tell me if I'm imagining this. I think at the moment I saw this book, and I saw it in the Commentary magazine, a write-up on it by, I think, Abrams. Mm-hmm. When I saw the book, I said, "Oh, this is an interesting subject." I ordered the book, and a day later the book arrived from Amazon. A day later. And I'm reading the book, and it resonates with me insanely. I was a child survivor from Hungary, Yugoslavia. Doesn't matter. But the point is that I have been not dealing with my Holocaust when I was younger. He didn't even know at one point when as a child. But this book was very powerful. And I thought I was like, I have a good self-image, so I thought I discovered this book from reading the commentary thing. I think since then, the book went viral. I really, if books can go, instead of calling it the bestseller, everybody's talking about it.
Carmela, what about it? You have not been clear. What resonated? Because, I know...
I tell you what resonated.
Okay, tell me what resonated.
Okay, first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, because you...
Dara, thanks for joining us, but I'll be interviewing Carmela today.
I'm much more interested in hearing what she has to say.
No, but there are.
I already know
you
what
are
I have
going to have 1,000 interviews, and they will all ask the same question.
This will be the best one, though.
This will be
Carmela, what resonated? Don't go off the tracks too much.
Okay, well, what resonated with me first that I have a lot of anger about how Jews are treated.
Now
Now
it all makes sense for me. Go on.
Well, it all like you discovered it this minute, and I felt that you had a lot of anger about, and one of the I read the book. I had a few weeks to think about it because of the holidays, and one of the good examples of I read also all your podcasts. But one of the things that maybe we can discuss, or you can discuss, which is maybe the most touchy because it's too closest to home, is what happened in Jersey City.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel all the time kind of on the verge of that. And I'm a little paranoid, but I'm aware that I'm a little paranoid, okay? But I feel that you got it. I feel, and I'm thinking, here is a bright young, and first of all, I saw you on JBS program once, and I said, yeah, your books are in, now I'm reading Eternal Life.
Carmela, now you're sounding like Anderson Cooper, who takes 7.5 hours to get to the point.
The point is, please, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about
Jersey City.
About Jersey City and, okay, what happened in Jersey, because Anne Frank, every interviewer who I read so far who interviewed you asked you about Anne Frank.
Let me rephrase the question. Dara, why does this book resonate with my mother? And let's use Jersey City as let's start with Jersey City, since she didn't answer after 8 hours.
That's fine.
No, because I want Dara to answer.
Yeah, well, so the end of the book, so the beginning of the book, the first chapter is about this Anne Frank museum and things like that. So it's each chapter is sort of like different examples in different different parts of the world, different aspects of our culture where Jews are expected to erase their own identity in order to be accepted, and that there's this reverence for dead Jews, and that reverence for dead Jews depends on erasing Jewish identity. Right. That is the whole goal. I mean, one of the reasons why you have this veneration for Anne Frank is that this is a person who was living in a Western country, wasn't particularly religious, was speaking a Western language. She's just like you and me. And there's this way we teach about bigotry where it's oh, Jews are just like everyone else. And, that's why we shouldn't hate them. And it's well, what if they aren't just like everyone else? Right. I mean, Jews spent 3,000 years not being like everyone else. So to go to the point about Jersey City, see, I'm now following your lead and meandering. About Jersey
That's
City.
A bad lead to follow. That's a very bad lead to follow.
Listeners who don't know what we're referring to. So this was the last chapter of my book starts with this discussion of attacks on the Hasidic community in New York and New Jersey that happened just before the pandemic. One of which was a shooting at a kosher grocery store in Jersey City. Carmela looks like she's getting agitated.
No. I wanted to say that there was one in Muncie with the merch.
Yes. So there was an attack in Jersey City, which was a shooting at a kosher grocery store. Mm-hmm. And then there also was a machete attack in Muncie, New York, which is an upstate town in New York State, where with the large Hasidic community, where somebody walked into a crowded Hanukkah party. Again, this was before the pandemic, and with a 4-foot machete and just started slashing people. Mm-hmm. So I was writing about those attacks. And what I did was I looked through news reports about those attacks. I could not find a news report about those attacks that didn't say something derogatory about the community being attacked in the process of reporting the attack. This is what was shocking to me. So, like, for example, in the Jersey City situation, and yeah, I live in New Jersey, as you mentioned. This is, probably about 25 minutes away from my house.
I'm sorry, just refresh my memory about what happened in Jersey City.
Yes. So this was, it was an attack on the, it was a kosher grocery store in Jersey City.
I remember this.
That was owned by this Satmar Hasidim. So this is, very strict sect of Hasidic Jews that had, it's a very small community that is of this Satmar Hasidim that live in Jersey City. So, and the attack was on this grocery store, but these people had, they had like, 500 pounds of explosives in their truck. It sounds like they were actually trying to get to, there was a Jewish school at the same address. So the FBI thinks that was their real target. So yes, unambiguous anti-Semitic attack. What was amazing is all the news reports about that attack talked about how this was, these Hasidic Jews were gentrifying a minority neighborhood, which is amazing for several reasons. First of all, these people were in fact fleeing gentrification. They had been priced out of Brooklyn, and that's why they were living in Jersey City. Second of all, these are highly visible members of the world's most persecuted minority. And third of all, if there's this murderous rage at gentrification going on, are there people like walking into Blue Bottle coffee franchises with automatic weapons and blowing away white hipsters? Because that hasn't been happening. So I don't think gentrification is the issue here. So that's an example of the way it's presented. The Muncie attack, same kind of thing. This was, this machete attack in this Hanukkah party. And the way that was reported, you almost couldn't find a news article about that didn't say something about, well, this Hasidic community had this zoning battle with non-Hasidic residents in the town, or, there was this big fight over the school board in this town between the Hasidic and non-Hasidic residents. And I'm reading these news articles and I'm just thinking, do we normally resolve municipal disputes with a machete? Because silly me, I left mine at home at the last school board meeting. And why is this information in these articles? And the reality is that these news articles are sending a signal to the public. And what they're sending a signal about is that these people deserve it. And that's what I'm exposing in presenting that. And, the reality is that, everybody gets behind the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh because, those are people who have nice hairstyles. Whereas here, these people, they deserve to be attacked with a machete because, we didn't like how they voted on the town council. There's something, it's so glaring, it's so obvious. And, the reality is there's been a lot of attacks on the Hasidic community. And, people who are attacking Hasidic Jews are not doing it because, they disagree with Hasidic beliefs and practices. They're doing it because these people are visible.
Yeah. So Carm, what was
that's all
for you about Jersey City? What was it that got you so heated up?
The equivalency to take, two people who are armed to the teeth and they come to destroy and murder, and they even drive down the street slowly to see where the kosher supermarket is, and they attack. They would have killed kids too if they wouldn't have been stopped earlier. And to consider them equal to somebody who like completely missing the main point, that it was justified, that the murder was basically it says that the murder was justified.
That's what exactly. There's this when you report these incidents this way, it's like victim blaming, right? It would be like if you said, you're reporting about rape, and you said, look what this woman was wearing.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question, and this might be controversial, but it's the journalist in me. I feel like some of the arguments you're making could possibly be made about other, ethnic groups or religious groups, for instance, African Americans. Look what happened with George Floyd, for example, and there are some people out there who say, well, he was aggressive, he was on drugs. I mean, there's some sort of similarities there where they're trying to justify it by saying, essentially, this guy was a criminal, so maybe, the officer had some right to step on his neck for 8 minutes. Is there a difference between Jews specifically and other religious or ethnic groups?
I mean, in this case, no, it's absolutely the same, right? I mean, I think it's exactly that, as you said, like, oh, George Floyd, oh, he was a drug dealer. It's like, well, I don't care if he was a serial killer.
Right.
Right. Like, that's not what the problem is here.
I mean, could there be a book called...
yes, people are justifying an act of hate, right? I mean, that's all it is. People are justifying violence, justifying an act of hate. And in this kind of reporting, you're sending a message to the public about what's acceptable. And I think it tells you something about the way we think about living in a diverse society, right? Like right now we have all this national conversations about diversity. But, it's often kind of lip service, because what you're really saying is, diversity is great as long as everybody agrees with me.
Like, would you be, would you be offended or surprised? Not literally, but I guess figuratively, if there was a book called People Love Dead African Americans, does the same sort of...
No, I think it's true. I think there's a lot of let's talk about how wonderful Martin Luther King is, but then not talk about systemic racism. Yeah, no, I think it's a very similar.
No, as long as they have the philosophy of Gandhi and nonviolence, and they don't touch us,
exactly.
And they stay in their place, they are perfect. But once they come and they demand, then we are threatened, right? That's with
Colonel, exactly. Yeah. So that's people love dead Jews. Living Jews, not so much, right? I mean, what I'm really saying is people are only comfortable with Jews if Jews do not have power, meaning, are either politically impotent or dead. Then it's cool.
You gave me an opening to bring up something. And it's going backwards. Like in Hebrew, we read from right to left, so I'm doing the whole interview from right to left. In the end, when all these attacks on Jews accelerated and increased just before COVID and during COVID, you kind of got upset, and rightly so, if I understand it from the book. But your solution, your immediate, I wouldn't say way to deal with it, correct me if I'm wrong, was to steep yourself deeper into Jewish learning and daf yomi and all that. And my feeling is a true confession. Studying daf yomi.
Explain what that is.
Okay,
we have a global audience with listeners and viewers in Pakistan. Okay, you want to explain since
it's your interview.
Our Pakistanis may not understand.
So what Carmel is referring to is Daf Yomi is it's like a worldwide program of studying the Babylonian Talmud, and Daf Yomi means a page a day. You study one page of the Talmud a day. It's like the world's biggest book club, right? It's like you're literally on the same page with hundreds of thousands of people who are studying this text. It takes 7.5 years to complete it. They were just starting a new cycle at the time around these attacks, and I decided to join it. I want to be clear. I don't see that that's not a solution to this problem.
But it sounded from your book, it sounded that it was a personal solution. I mean, not a solution. No, the word solution is too strong.
No,
it was an attenuating thing.
For me, it was a refuge.
A refuge.
That's how I would describe it. It was a mental refuge. Because what happened was, this was in, again, before the pandemic in January of 2020, there was after all these, these anti-Semitic attacks, the community in New York City, Jewish community in New York City had organized this anti-hate march. There were 25,000 people who went to it. And it was within a few days of this other huge Jewish gathering in my area, which was the, it's called the Siyum Hashaf, the conclusion. Yes, the conclusion of the Talmud, which was 90,000 people in MetLife Stadium in the Meadowlands gathering to celebrate the conclusion of the Talmud. And I just, was looking at these two events and was sort of like, there's a lot of ways to respond to this kind of hatred. I don't claim to have a solution to this. I really don't. I honestly don't even think that, like anti-Semitism is not a problem that Jews can solve, right? Like it's not our,
it's not a Jewish problem.
Yes,
right. I was just going to ask
what society.
Yeah, I was going to ask what is the solution, but I mean, in essence, it's kind of like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It feels like there is no real solution in sight, right? I mean,
the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is easier than this.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah,
yeah. Which does not make it easy.
It doesn't imply it's easy. It's,
so
one is like lifting a 10-ton stone and the other a 9-ton.
So is there an answer, or is just? I mean, I keep going back to racism in the form of people, having ill will against African Americans. I mean, I don't think there's a real solution to racism in this country because it's so embedded, and you're basically saying
we are working on all sorts of solutions now.
And you're basically saying that that's ingrained. Anti-Semitism is so firmly ingrained in the fabric of our world, it's hard to undo it. Is that what you're saying?
I guess it is very embedded. Does that mean that there's this fatalistic thing that there's nothing we can do? I mean, the answer to that is no, because what I'm trying to achieve in this book is clarity. So, there's so many things I think that even the Jewish community does that are almost like a product of almost an internalized anti-Semitism that's not even conscious in terms of how we talk about it. So one example of this is the argument that you often find people making that after, anti-Semitic attacks, which is Jews are the canary in the coal mine. Right? Like when Jews are attacked, that's like a sign of like this social decline. And think about how much you have to denigrate yourself in order to say that. Because what you're basically saying is people should care when Jews are murdered or maimed because it might be an ominous sign that real people might later get attacked.
They are not canaries.
Like
they are not canaries. They are not canaries.
Yes, right. And also, in other words, there's a requirement that as Jews, you have to, one has to erase oneself in order to deserve public respect. And so, so as I said, do I think there's a solution to this problem? Well, I mean, if there is a solution, it starts with clarity. It starts with recognizing that, that making people erase their identity in order to be part of the conversation is itself part of the problem.
Before I married his father 60 years ago,
also known as my dad.
Yes, his dad. I lived in Europe, and I lived in Switzerland for a while as a student. And the French always said, "Vive la différence." Long live the difference. So the point is, I don't know if they apply it to the Jews, but there is now a need that the Jews have to be just like the non-Jews. Otherwise, it's not okay. While we are different, and we should be proudly declaring that we are different but equal, like the...
Yes. Well, and it's more than just that, right? Because it's that, as I said, like Jews spent 3,000 years not being like everyone else, right? Judaism is a counterculture that runs through Western civilizations. And, this is something that's evident, I will tell you, even to a child. And I will explain what I mean by that. Where I live in New Jersey, the school districts have, in 6th grade, their curriculum for social studies is ancient civilizations. And each of my children, when they've been in 6th grade, have noticed something strange about this year of social studies. Each of them at some point during 6th grade have come home to me and said, in school, we're learning about all these great ancient civilizations. We learned about ancient Egypt, and we learned about ancient Persia, and we learned about ancient Greece, and we learned about ancient Rome, and we learned about ancient Babylonia. And they said, and in school, we learned about how these civilizations had all these great achievements. But at home, for each one of these great ancient civilizations, we have a holiday about how they tried to kill us. So, Mom, I'm confused. Are these great civilizations or are they not? And my answer is yes. In other words, like, yes, ancient Egypt did amazing things with like engineering and building all these structures. And they did it with slave labor, like ancient Rome.
Wait a minute, Jewish slave labor.
That's an
yes, exactly. That's
the
what I'm saying.
Egyptians built it with Jewish.
But that's a really astute point made by sixth graders, because I would.
Yes, well, I mean, it was obvious to them. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's obvious. So, and when you introduce that idea of Jewish history as a counterculture into the way you understand the history of the West, it really overturns a lot of what you think you understand about the history of the West. And that's sort of the deeper, it raises moral questions. And I think it's very similar to, you brought the example of of racial justice in the United States, very similar to the conversations we're having now about, the way we look at, racial justice in this country, the way we sort of are reevaluating how we teach history. I mean, I know my kids are learning different things in school about the history of this country than I learned, and better, a more complete picture. Imagine if you had Jewish history involved in the way you taught about the history of the West. It would really change the picture. People do not want to do that because it is not flattering.
One of the things that really, I saw your hand up, Carm, but let me jump in here. One of the things, I love that you raise your hand. One of the things that resonated with me was, I actually read a New York Times book review on your book, and the guy who wrote the review was talking about how he was in Belarus or traveled to Belarus, and he met an old woman, and through a translator, she said to him something along the lines of, it just hasn't been the same since the Jews have been gone. It's not, as lively or something along those lines. But it was very, it was unintentionally very denigrating. And I think, Carmela, correct me if I'm wrong, what this guy who wrote the review said was, she was saying it was sad that the Jews are dead, but he was thinking, man, they should really appreciate living Jews. And you lost your father and members of your family, and people say, oh, it's horrible that these people were killed, but if I kind of am understanding this correctly, it's screw them. You don't need their sympathy. You'd rather have your father still alive, even though he'd probably be dead by now.
No, I never.
Am I off on that?
Because of my own personality, I never went for the pity. And here's another thing.
What I'm saying, instead of the pity, you'd much rather have a living father.
Well, obviously, but the thing is that I always thought, this is another naivete. The one naivete is, ask Joel when he told me that you accepted to be on our podcast. And I'm usually not intimidated. That's not my style. But I was literally, I kept calling my daughter, who also lives in New Jersey, my granddaughters. I said, I cannot believe it. I think you are one of the most creative minds, the most wonderful person. I didn't think I'm not playing the modest one, but I was really very, very intimidated by Dara coming on our podcast. I didn't think we are on that level, but it's true. But I always thought the same thing about the word resilience. I always thought of the word resilience that I sort of coined it for myself. That was my favorite adjective for myself. Resilience and defiance, these two words. And now they are like such cliches, and they are all over. Did you notice that the word resilience and defiance are all over the place now?
You were ahead of your time.
I know, but it wasn't that long ago. But I love the word resilience.
I think you bring up the phrase "never again," which is kind of like the motto of the Holocaust too. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so to go to this back to the resilience question, right? I mean, that's so much of what Jewish history and Jewish tradition teaches, right? I mean, is this idea of also what psychologists now call post-traumatic growth, right? That one comes through, calamity, not just, shattered by calamity, but that there are possibilities of building in the wake of calamity. I mean, that's what the whole structure of Jewish tradition is built on, right? Because it's based on this, idea of that, of exile and return and loss and renewal, right? It's this whole double helix of loss and renewal. To go to your question about never again, I mean, this is sort of, this is like this, I will say that this is sort of a problem that I have, and I discuss it in detail in the book, with the sort of the problem with the way that Holocaust education is often used, which is that, it's like, oh, well, the reason is this never again idea where it's like, oh, we're going to, it's really important for people to learn about the Holocaust so as not to repeat it. It's like, okay. But what that has come to mean is that anything that's short of the Holocaust,
less than Holocaust.
Like, the bar is a little bit high, right? And then there's a point in the book where I sort of say, here's a bunch of things that are not the Holocaust. And it's everything from somebody firebombing a synagogue to shooting rockets into southern Israel to entire countries, having their Jewish populations expelled and all their assets seized, which happened in a dozen countries in the Islamic world,
which you wrote about.
So your thesis,
right. And so it's oh, never again. It's never again are we gonna murder 6 million
but 1 million or 2 million.
Right, exactly, right? This is the bar is too darn high here. Right?
So back to the tree of life.
You're setting a standard that's absurd.
Well, back to the Tree of Life synagogue, I think you mentioned it in relation to that. It's I don't know how many people were killed, 12 or 13, whatever. So it's 13 Jews were gunned down, but, it wasn't 6 million. I mean, that's kind of what you're getting at, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, right. But, and not just that, but like I said, the expulsion of Jews from entire countries. Did you know that the Tripoli, the capital of Libya, was 25% Jewish? Until the 1950s, and now the entire country it is Judenrein. There are no Jews in Libya. You probably are fairly educated people. You probably did not know any of that, right? Because who cares? It's not the Holocaust. They only lived there. That was
I knew about Aleppo in my self-defense. I knew about Aleppo.
What really?
Right. I mean, there's many countries like this around the world, right? But it's just like you said, oh, they only killed 10 people. That's fine.
Yeah, what really put it into perspective?
No, that's the problem.
But as you know, and we know that Judaism teaches one person.
Yes.
If you save a person, you save the world.
Of course.
The Anne Frank story is really what hammered this home, because it's a microcosmic look at the macro picture, which is, and we talked about it at the beginning of this podcast, but just to reiterate, there was a religious Jewish person working at the museum, Anne Frank's museum, where she was forced to hide, and they forced him to hide his kippah, which is his yarmulke. And when I heard that, it all kind of made sense. That was and I think it's at the very beginning of the book, but I heard that, and just the rich irony of that is absurd.
It's priceless.
It's priceless.
As far as ironies go.
And then the fact that you said it took 4 months, a tribunal of 4 months to figure out how to deal with that is even crazier. But I think that's a strong example. Carmel, I'll let you get back in, but let me bring up. So we weren't joking when we said that your book, People Love Dead Jews, Reports from a Haunted Present, and I'll show you guys the cover right here, right now. Get the book, buy it. It really is going viral, and I'll tell you why. And I'm sure you know this by now, Dara, but just in the last couple of days, Sarah Silverman, who's not the most, she's got some issues with Israel and Jews herself, despite being one, but she came out in public and basically went after the squad, AOC, Ilhan Omar, and the others in D.C. regarding defunding the Iron Dome in Jerusalem. And I have a quote here. She said on her podcast, and by the way, I tried to get her as a guest, and she ignored me, and for that, I will never forgive her.
No, she did not answer yet.
She said, please do not defund the Iron Dome. I know that it's not actually going to be. My family lives there, added Silverman, who is Jewish. She said that opposition to the funding proves that, quote, people only really like Jews if they're suffering, adding that dead Jews get a lot of honor. She had to read your book. Are you honored? Are you honored?
I saw a few people have pointed that out to me.
Has she reached out to you? Have you told? I
mean, you could also say that, like, it's just true.
Yeah. No, but
it's your book is what I call viral because there are more articles about this. It resonates, and we have to ask.
By the way, I have to get this. This has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that when I worked for Michael Moore for a summer, I've been in TV news for 26 years. He had a ping pong tournament at the end of our little 3-month show that we were working on. And the head writer was a guy named Tom Giannis, and I am an excellent ping pong player. And they were giving away a trophy that was like 8 feet tall. And in the finals was yours truly and Tom Giannis. And Tom Giannis's girlfriend at the time, 1999 or something, was Sarah Silverman. And the entire time I am playing Tom Giannis, she is yelling multiple expletives my way and telling me that I suck and I'll never beat him. And I won, and I got the trophy, and that cheap bastard Michael Moore made me return the trophy. It was for the next go around. So that's my story.
Yeah,
but
Joel is boys will be boys.
Yes, but where did we leave off there? I just got distracted.
I know you did.
We were talking about Sarah Silverman.
Yeah, Sarah. There is so much.
Not Sarah.
Dara. I'm sorry, Dara Horn. I know her name. I mentioned it so many times. People hate to talk to me anymore. But I have so many other questions and issues. And one of the suggestions, because I like to give suggestions like not food recipes, but for your adventures of with dead Jews, the podcast. I
should mention that. Yes, I would be remiss not to mention that. Yes, I have my own podcast, which is called Adventures with Dead Jews, it's different stories from the book. It's not the same stories. It's different stories.
So I have an idea for you
Carmelo loves to produce. Go ahead, Carm.
I see that Babi Yar has its 80th anniversary.
Yes, I saw that too.
Yeah, and that is, another. Today they are not celebrations, but honoring and everything is. The president of Israel went to be participant in that, and 34,000 Jews were just brought to a ravine and shot.
Yes.
And do you know the name of the poet who wrote about it? It's a little quiz. There was a Russian poet that I vaguely remembered, and then I Googled him.
Carm, I've never seen so many copious notes.
I am totally obsessed
Dara,
with you.
she's been worried about this.
In which language is this in Yiddish or
Yevgeny Yevchenko wrote a Russian.
Okay.
Wrote a beautiful poem about Babi Yar. Babi Yar was a very
Dara, let's talk for a minute. I thought this was interesting too. Jews who changed their names at Ellis Island, which many people can relate to. If my great grandfather changed his name to Diaz, I would have been anchoring the nightly news. But as Waldman, there was no shot. But what happened at Ellis Island?
Okay, so yes, there's this mythology that's been passed on in many American Jewish families, and it's in some other ethnic groups too. There's that scene in The Godfather Part 2, I think, with Vito Corleone at Ellis Island. There's this mythology that people's names were changed at Ellis Island by an incompetent clerk or something. Mm-hmm. It never happened. No one's names were ever changed at Ellis Island. No one at Ellis Island wrote down people's names. They got the names from ships' manifests, and those were compiled at the port of origin from passports. And the shipping company had to get everything right, because if they messed up your documentation, they had to send you back to Europe at the company's expense. So people would lose their jobs over errors on the European end. In Ellis Island, nobody's writing down immigrants' names. Also, more importantly, though, we have all of the evidence about name changing that we need, because there are tens of thousands of court filings in New York City court from the 1920s and 30s, 40s, and 50s of American Jews, both immigrants and children of immigrants, going to city court to voluntarily change their names. So no, your name was not changed at Ellis Island. So now that we know that never happened.
Why did they change their name?
That's the interesting thing. So I want to be clear, this is not my research. There's a woman named, a historian named Kirsten Vermeglech, who wrote a great book called A Rosenberg by Any Other Name, which tracks
they change their names
violence.
Because Vermeglech is so hard to say. They had to change
Yes, exactly. Yes, I've heard her make that joke too. But yeah, so she wrote this book. She researched all these court records. That's not my research. That's hers. And she looked through these, and what she discovered is that these were American Jews who when they would petition the court, you had to give a reason why you were changing your name. They don't mention anti-Semitism because they're participating in this, they're succumbing to it. So instead what they say is, my name Lefkowitz is difficult to pronounce. And I'm like, well, is there more than one way to pronounce Lefkowitz? My name Greenberg is a foreign sounding name that is interfering with my ability to advance professionally. And I'm like, what else is a foreign sounding name from that period in American history besides Greenberg? How about Lindbergh? How about Eisenhower? Right? How about Juilliard? How about LaGuardia? Right? These are names that are difficult to pronounce and spell, and they sound foreign. How about Roosevelt? The problem is not that that your name sounds foreign. So why are we pretending that that's the problem? It's the same reason we're pretending a generation later that we tell our children, oh, the name was changed by accident at Ellis Island. You don't want to admit the reality. The reality was American anti-Semitism. At the beginning of this century, through the middle of through the middle of the 20th century, this was people were facing intense. Today we talk about anti-Semitic incidents. I have a friend, Rachel Gordon, who's a historian, American Jewish historian. She's like, now we talk about anti-Semitic incidents. In the 1930s and 40s in the United States, it wasn't about incidents. Yeah, no, it was you couldn't rent an apartment.
Yeah,
right?
Well, you couldn't
rent an apartment.
Here we are in Miami. You couldn't buy a condo in certain.
You couldn't get a job. I mean, these people were changing their names because they couldn't get a job, right? And so what they did though is they made up this story to protect their children, right? Because imagine the devastation of having to admit this, that you uprooted your life from a place because of this problem, and then you come here and you have the same problem. That's devastating. So they've created this mythology. And I think that mythology was really effective because what it means is people, a lot of American Jews, I'm 44, a lot of people my age and younger, when we encounter anti-Semitism in America, we're surprised because we're like, that's not supposed to happen here. And it's because this memory was suppressed. It's not that it never happened here. It's that this memory was so well suppressed. I'm kind of grateful to, I'm a fourth generation American. My family's been here since the turn of the 20th century. And I'm grateful to people who made that decision to not pass on that psychological damage, but it's definitely mythology.
So Dara, it is pretty evident that you were critical of different types of people, art, institutions in the book. Did you have any trepidation about those criticisms that people could come back and snipe and snap at you?
I mean, I don't think Shakespeare's going to come back from the grave.
Yeah, because
Well, there are a lot of Shakespeare devotees out there. That's true. My professors at Brandeis would yell at you.
Look, I called this book "People Love Dead Jews" to make people uncomfortable, right? I mean, I think that I think so much of one's role, especially and I think this is true for a lot of people who are anybody who's in a minority position or not in a position of power. So much of your life is structured around making other people comfortable.
Exactly.
I'll tell you, I feel this way as a woman. I've been, I've published 6 books now. I've been giving public lectures for 20 years. I know as a woman that when I give a public lecture, I have to smile, even when I'm saying something grim, because as a woman, I need to smile because otherwise men might think I'm aggressive. Yes, even when I'm saying something really grim, right? I have to be like, here I am, making you feel comfortable. So I'm done making people feel comfortable.
One more little thing.
Hey, you know what? My mother was done doing that 52 years ago when I was born.
He's way ahead of me.
You have something, stop making people feel comfortable.
Oh, no. I make everybody comfortable except him.
Yeah, for 52 years. She was way ahead of the curve.
Look, I'm sort of, it's belittling to say it's about making people feel comfortable. It's about, I think that, the way that this sort of like denigration, it continues is when people erase themselves, right? I keep using this example of erasure, right? Hide your yarmulke under a baseball hat, and then we're fine.
That's La France.
Right? Like,
Vive la France.
Yes, right? That's, this idea that you need to sort of, that you need to, erase part of yourself. That's what I'm pushing back against. I'm not afraid of.
Can I say something?
Yes.
It's your show, Carmen. You don't need to raise the hand or, God, I'm going to chop your arm off. Go on.
Apropos, you are not going to use a machete, I hope. The interesting story Joel attacked me one time here at when we were talking about something, and I said something not so admiring about Elie Wiesel in another context. And then,
Carmela has some resentment towards Elie Wiesel, basically saying he tried to capture the market on Holocaust survivors, and she wasn't very fond of him, which is a very contrarian point of view.
Yeah, but I don't have very strong feelings. He served the purpose. He did a great job. He dined with
He's
president.
dead, so now you love him.
No, I loved him when he was alive. But
everyone loves nephews.
Now I love him. But the point that you raise in the book is fascinating with Francois Mauriac, and you want to tell us?
Yes. Sure. So, and again, I want to, look, I'm an academic, so I credit other people's research. This is not my research. This is Naomi Seidman, who was a professor at Berkeley. And so this is, her research.
This is fascinating.
Yes. Naomi Seidman. She sort of did this research into the Elie Wiesel's book, Night, which, as she points out, he originally wrote that book in Yiddish. And the Yiddish version of that book was titled "And the World Was Silent." That was the title of the book. And it's not just the title that is different. It's the book told the same story that you have in the book Night, but it was like filled with this rage against the world that allowed this genocide to happen, right? It's like, where were the nations of the world? And what happened was, when he was translating it into French, he was working with this another Nobel laureate. He was not himself yet a Nobel laureate.
This was in France, when he was still in France.
Yes, in France. Yes, thank you. The French Catholic writer Francois Mauriac worked with him on adapting the book into, not just translating, but adapting the book into French. And what he did, I would say what the two of them did together, was that in the French version, which is the version you have in English, it's translated from the French, he took all that rage that was directed at the nations of the world and just transformed it into a theological angst. So instead of "where were the nations of the world," it's "where's God?" And that was a very canny decision, because when he's translating this for a non-Jewish readership, especially, in 1950s in France, a country that had a lot of people who collaborated with the Nazis.
Yeah.
Yes. What non-Jewish reader wants to read about, how their society failed and they're responsible? Better to blame God. We can all get behind blaming God, right? And that was what he did. And, that's what made that book popular in a lot of ways, is that it was this, he transformed this, a political problem into a theological problem. And, I'm not claiming that there's nothing theological to talk about when you're talking about the Holocaust, but he subsumed her argument. Again, this is Naomi Seidman.
But that's
her
not
argument
how
is that he subsumed this rage in order to make himself acceptable to a non-Jewish public. And what that meant was also submitting to this sort of Christian paradigm of Christianity, a lot of the religion is based on this idea that, the suffering Jew gives us all grace.
If he went the other way and
did you hear this last one?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
I am still educated.
Yes, I did, Carmela. If he went the other way and blamed it on a political level and world governments, do you think the book would have not been a success?
Not as much.
Yeah, and it's not a secret because we know that, right? So in my book, I give examples of other works of literature about the Holocaust that are written in Yiddish.
And nobody heard of them because they don't have a happy ending.
Correct. Nobody wants to read it because it doesn't have a happy ending. Well, guess what? the Holocaust didn't have a happy ending. So, that's like, these people are like looking for like an uplifting story.
We
We
want a million more Dara Horns. We want a million more Dara Horns.
Carmela, do you feel after speaking with Dara that you have worked through in these last 45, 50 minutes through some of your anger about your father being gassed and everything you have gone through in these 45 minutes? Was this
let me explain.
Was this some sort of panacea?
That's part of my character already. It's incurable, but it's certainly I need fellow travelers who are angry about the right things, about the not the right things, the same things as I'm angry about, and even that myth that anti-Semitism did, like after World War II, that there was bloodletting such heavy with the Holocaust that for a while anti-Semitism was dormant, is also a myth.
I mean, not in the Soviet Union.
Not in the Soviet Union, as you illustrated.
Not in the Islamic world. Yeah,
exactly. That's also a myth, and I believe you study the Daf Yomi. My husband also loved to study the Daf Yomi before he, now he's in a wheelchair, not well. But in any case, I think that, now I lost my train. It was a stressful hour for me. Give me a break. I'm 82.
You made it through beautifully, Carmela.
Well, we're talking about anger, right? And one thing I want to say about, I mean, I feel like they're, in sort of like, Anglo-American culture, there's sort of this like, there's this like waspy thing where you're not allowed to be angry.
You were not allowed.
Right? It's considered in poor taste, right? But the reality is like anger is an emotion that is
more energizing.
That's a human way of expressing injustice, right? Anger, like you feel anger when you perceive something to be unjust, whether you're 4 years old and the injustice is like, I want a cookie.
I know what I wanted to say.
Yes, right. It's when that's what that emotion is coming from. It's coming from a perception of injustice.
Well, what helps me personally with my, in this area, not in general. If I'm mad at Joel, it doesn't help in this area. But what helps me is that
shooting guns.
Exactly.
By the way,
Thank you. But what I mean,
Dara, by the way, Dara,
wait a minute.
We had a sniper on who served in Afghanistan, and him and Carmela are supposed to go shooting. She'll be much calmer after that.
May I say something? She will misunderstand it. What I'm saying is the Daf Yomi would not do the same thing for me. I believe I have a very simplistic view of this whole big gestalt that we try to even take a tiny bit of it. I think that power is the issue. Power. Yes, the Jews were so powerless for so long. Yes. Okay?
You're absolutely correct.
That is the issue here.
Yes. No, absolutely.
And when he jokes about even the fact that once I went with we had a gym trainer and I learned how to shoot with him. He went to teach his daughter. He's a certified whatever here in Miami, and I went with him. I wanted to know what it feels like because people are constantly saying they're going to shoot me. I want to know what it feels like to shoot a gun. I wanted to have the experience.
Karma, I might shoot you in the ankle or something.
She will think I'm completely Meshuggah. I'm so middle class and so
not
boring.
Not at all.
I'm already working on a sequel to.
There's lots of there are a lot of responses.
What is the sequel?
But you're correct that there's really a question about power, right? Because that's people love dead Jews. The idea is that
there is somebody
Jews are acceptable to a non-Jewish public if they are powerless.
Exactly.
Whether that means politically impotent or
and
dead.
they got become habituated. In 2,000 years, they got used to people being the Jews being powerless. They got used to it. They were the kicking ball.
Yes.
I'm already working on a sequel to Tara's book called "People Love Middle-Aged White Men Unless They Want to Be National News Correspondents" by Joel Waldman.
When middle-aged white men have been persecuted for several thousand years, we can have that conversation.
Exactly. That's exactly what I told. I told him the same thing. Excellent. Now women will rule.
I have a chip on my shoulder, but Dara, it was excellent talking to you. We get billed by the minute
maybe
here.
She wants to ask a question.
Dara, anything you'd like to add, as I like to say at the end of my interviews?
Just that this is a book. It's a podcast. I'd love to continue the conversation. Carmela, I would love to have a whole separate podcast just with you and hear about your experiences.
You should do it.
And also, by the way, scholar in me wants to ask you all kinds of questions about where you're from in Hungary.
Dara, you should have her on as a guest.
Yes.
Dara, have her on as a guest.
No, I said everything about myself.
No, you didn't. Carmela has never said everything, ever. Until she's a dead Jew.
The point is, Joel and I were during the COVID. Joel said, let's do a podcast. I don't know anything. So the first session.
By the way, Dara, this is absolutely Carmela's trademark. Every time I wrap a show, she goes into some crazy long ancillary story. Go for it, Carm.
No. The very first session we had, Joel said to me, okay, tell them now about the Holocaust. I was only 5 when the Holocaust happened. I was born in 1939. So I said to him, no way will I do that. I said, there is the COVID out there. Everything is falling apart. People are dying, and I'm going to entertain them. And there is an overload of Holocaust literature. I said, that's too much. Let's talk about how I met your father. And that's what we did with our first session.
Let me talk about our direct competitor, Joe Rogan. I've listened to his last 20 podcasts. He repeats the same crap. He's a moron. Never had a conversation as enlightening, as intelligent as this. So, Dara, we appreciate it. The name of Dara's book, once again, is People Love Dead Jews, Reports from a Haunted Present. You can buy it anywhere books are sold, and probably even where books are not sold. She is a delightful guest. This was super informative. I do think you should have Carmela on because she's the star of the show, and she'll definitely provide more.
I would disappoint you. Don't bother. Leave well enough alone.
She will not disappoint.
I think you are a gift to us all. You are, and I wish you. I bless you. I bless your family.
Dara,
I just learned recently that I can bless people because I'm a survivor.
Dara,
I didn't know this about 6 months ago at the pool. Somebody came over to me and said, "Could you bless me?" I said, "Why?" She says, "You are a survivor."
You never blessed me.
I thought you had to be a Kohen.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Kohen too.
Oh, are you?
Dara, next time we're in New Jersey, we need to hook up.
Yes.
Meet in person. But thank you.
You always say this, but then you never hook up.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
We have some connections.
Here we
very
go again.
indirect ones, which will not bring up, related to our grandchildren's education in New Jersey.
Carmela, okay. I'm rapping again. Do you like to go through your family tree now?
No, I just don't want to let her go.
Dara, we loved having you on. Thank you so much. And the masses, our following, will watch with great interest. So thank you.
Yeah, and we're waiting for the next book.
Thank you so much for having me.
Right back with the news schmooze.
Welcome back. It's time for the news schmooze.
You make me so mad. No, you are really an immature person.
What do you think of Dara?
No, I'm not doing it now. I'm so disgusted. I'm not doing
it. You have to remember, we edit this in non-sequential order. So you're talking about the opening segment and you're upset about that, but we've just interviewed, in theory, Dara Horn. That's what the audience
Can I just
heard.
say something to you?
Yes.
I want that first part completely cut out.
I will edit it out for you, Carmela. I
will look at it. If you don't, I swear on
Carmela's
my grandchildren.
Carmela's upset because I had said something off the top that she didn't like, and I will edit it out. You have my word, Carm. You have my word. Can we go on with the news schmooze
Yes,
now?
then we can.
Okay. On to the what did you think of Dara, by the way?
What did I think of Dara?
Yeah.
I didn't have many heroes. She's one of my heroes. I have very few heroes.
She's a hero? She really captured the way you feel inside. I thought you were going to actually tear up at one point.
No, I wasn't going to tear up. I was going to punch somebody at one point.
Okay. So this first story is very interesting because we actually have, not next week, the week after, we have Mark Polymeropoulos, who is a covert CIA agent for 26 years. He was in charge of, I believe, 2,000 agents.
Don't give up the spoiler.
I will not. And he, now you just made me lose my train of thought.
No, he's going
When he retired, he was the equivalent in the CIA of a 4-star general, but he had to retire because of what's known as Havana syndrome. And that brings me to our first story. National security officials at the White House were recently issued a warning to move away from the immediate area as soon as possible if you ever feel the acute onset of pressure, sound, or heat in the head. In brown bag lunches over the past week, policy staff at the Pentagon have been instructed to report any strange sudden health symptoms without delay. The U.S. government is sending messages to diplomats, national security staff, and intelligence officers that anomalous health incidents, also known as Havana syndrome, because it was first detected in Cuba, are serious, widespread, and pose real danger to their health at home and abroad. This is part of a broader strategy by the Biden administration to act with greater speed on reported cases, which brings me to this question, Carmela. Is Havana syndrome, in your opinion, a real thing?
100%.
So you think that Mark Polymeropoulos, who we're going to talk to...
I thought you wouldn't give up.
I already gave up the name. Who cares?
No, but I didn't think you would say that he had to retire because of that.
Mom, it's been all over the news. On literally every
I'm
news.
sure everybody watched the
He's been on Fox News, CNN.
I think of course.
You think he was zapped?
Oh, yes, he was zapped.
The scary world we live in. Would you ever have considered a career in the CIA? You could have done it.
How do you know I'm not?
On to the next question. Which professions, give me a guess, give me 3 professions which have the highest turnover rate in a recent study of U.S. job volatility?
Turnover rate? You probably will say TV reporters.
No.
The highest turnover rate?
3 professions with the highest turnover rate.
Okay, 1 second. Can you wait 1 second?
Give me 1 or 2.
Don't talk.
I have to do the Jeopardy music or people think that the show's
okay,
over.
well, so say what. So what is it?
Police officers, restaurant staff, and bankers are the ones with the highest turnover rates in the study of U.S. job volatility.
The policemen make total sense because of the
protest, all the stuff going on, defund the police. Now, how about for restaurant workers?
Well, they were not. They had no jobs.
Constant battles with unmasked customers, exposure to COVID-19,
and
created
the
added
closure
stress.
of restaurants.
Banking and finance. Why are they leaving?
Probably they're very poorly paid.
High-paid, overworked bankers are quitting because the lifestyle trade-off just wasn't worth it. And post-pandemic, they're saying, I need to live a better life. Other categories with high rates of turnover, this is bad news for your granddaughter, software engineers and information technology professions. So stay away from all those jobs. On to the last news story of the day, which is...
Why would they stay over? The turnover is the people's, what the people want. They're not fired.
They're turning over to get more money at the next place.
Exactly. That's what my granddaughter did.
Israel, a country that's near and dear to your heart. Israeli archaeologists have found a rare ancient toilet in Jerusalem dating back more than 2,700 years when private bathrooms were a luxury in the holy city. The Israeli Antique Authority said the smooth carved limestone toilet was found in a rectangular cabin that was part of a sprawling mansion overlooking what is now the old city. It was designed for comfortable sitting with a deep septic tank dug underneath. And this story really broke my heart because it made me think of the zillion other people who did not have the limestone toilet 2,700 years ago.
I read in Dara Horn's book, a chapter that maybe you skipped or something, how they discussed in the Talmud everything everything they discussed in the Talmud, all minutiae of life, everything. And one of them was, where can you say the morning prayer? How far from excrements do you have to be?
How far you have to be?
How far they had a discussion.
And what's the answer?
There was, they measured it, I think, in cubits.
Because back then, obviously, there was no real toilet.
No, and they couldn't just make and then do their prayers. They had to remove themselves from that area.
What did they wipe with back then? Leaves?
Papyrus.
What's papyrus? Yeah, I can't say it now because you just said it wrong. How do you say that word?
I don't know.
Papyrus? I know what you're trying to say, but I don't know how to say it. All right, we'll be right back with a new segment.
What's the new segment?
You'll find out.
You ruined my best moments in life.
And we're back, and Carmela says I ruined her best moments in life because I said something once again that she's latched onto that she didn't like off the top because she respects Dara Horn, and it was not meant to be.
No, you had no business
denigrating
doing it today.
Carmela, we will edit it out. Dara still loves you.
Thank you. Edit it out.
So we are starting a new segment today, and we didn't have much luck. The title of the segment is Caught in a Kerfuffle, Call Carm. Carm is a licensed therapist, and I reached out to my 2,000 or 3,000 Facebook friends to ask if anyone has a question for Carmela, and I got 0 responses. So
it's not true. Janet responded.
Yeah, but she didn't have a question for you.
She will.
She will. So
for a small price.
I will start this week.
Okay.
And we'll do a quick thing because we're running out of time, and we're out of time. And then hopefully next week, everyone will jump in, and if they're caught in a kerfuffle, they can call Carm.
I never knew the word kerfuffle.
So, Carm, last night I was getting ready to do a live shot. As you know, the temperatures in Miami are very high. I heard the day before that a reporter fainted on air, and then I had a rush of anxiety as I was going live, thinking, what if I'm next? What if I faint on live TV? It'll be absolutely humiliating, absolutely embarrassing. And I could feel the heart rate rise. And
Joel, you know what? Joel.
Yeah.
If you feel yourself like passing out, lie down on the floor before so you don't hit your head.
You can't do that if you need to be on TV, which is my point.
My point to you is it's more important not to hit your head than to look good on TV.
How do you think I would have done without real toilets 2,700 years ago?
Like everybody else.
Yeah.
Besides, you might have been a royalty. The way you live your life, I think you were.
It's always got to be a put down. Carm, anything you'd like to add? This show has gone heavy, but it was worth it. Did you enjoy Dara?
I enjoyed her.
You did?
Yes.
She's a heroine of yours.
Yes.
I don't mean the drug. I mean the hero.
Yes,
form.
Hero in female form.
I'm sure she'll write a follow-up book to this.
I know.
Will you show up on her podcast?
She said she's writing another book.
Will you appear on her podcast if she asks?
No.
100% you will, because it cross-promotes our podcast.
Gee, you are such a... I don't want to say.
You're going to say it again. I've never seen someone be able to lie with such ease and reckless abandon.
Joel, I only know one other person.
It's hard to believe that my own mother can lie.
I know only one other person.
Who?
One single other person, you.
Love you, America. We'll be back next week.
I always said it's an art form that has to be used very, very sparingly, because otherwise it becomes trite and disgusting.
Lying. The art form by Carmela Waldman. That will be an addendum to our podcast. Carmela will write a book. Love you, America.
Love you, America. Bye.